You have to get brutally honest with yourself about something that most people spend their entire lives avoiding. The stories they tell themselves about why they can't move forward. Because the truth is, excuses don't sound like lies when you say them in your own voice. They sound reasonable. They sound justified. They sound like protection. But what they really are invisible chains that keep you stuck exactly where you are. Think about it. How many times have you said, I don't have enough time? I'm not ready yet. I'll start tomorrow. Or this just isn't the right moment. Those phrases feel harmless, but every single time you say them, you're training your mind to accept less than what you're capable of. You're negotiating with your own potential, and every negotiation like that ends the same way. You lose, because success doesn't come from convenience. It doesn't come when everything is perfectly aligned. It comes when you decide that your reasons are no longer stronger than your results. And that decision is not comfortable. It's not easy. It requires you to look at yourself without filters and admit that maybe, just maybe, you've been standing in your own way. Here's the shift. Instead of asking, why can't I? Start asking, how will I? That one change rewires everything. When you ask, why can't I? Your brain goes searching for limitations. But when you ask, how will I? Your brain is forced to find solutions, and solutions lead to action. Action leads to momentum. Momentum leads to results. You don't need a perfect plan. You don't need to feel confident. You don't need approval from anyone. What you need is a standard, a non-negotiable line you draw for yourself that says, this is who I am now. This is what I do now. And once that line is drawn, excuses don't get a seat at the table anymore, because the reality is the most successful people are not the ones with the best circumstances. They're the ones who refuse to let their circumstances become their identity. They felt tired, but they acted. They felt uncertain, but they moved. They felt fear, but they didn't let it decide for them. They didn't wait for motivation. They created it through action. And you can do the same, starting right now. Not tomorrow, not later, not when you feel ready, now. Because every time you act despite your excuses, you weaken them. And every time you give in to them, you strengthen them. It's a pattern. And patterns, once repeated enough, become your life, so interrupt the pattern. Catch yourself in the moment you start to justify delay. Hear the excuse forming in your mind and shut it down. Replace it with a decision. Replace it with movement. Even the smallest step forward breaks the cycle and proves to you that you are in control. You are not your excuses. You are the one choosing whether to listen to them or rise above them. And the moment you stop negotiating with them is the moment you start stepping into the life you've been talking about for so long. Now let's talk about something that quietly controls more lives than failure ever could: fear. Not the loud, obvious kind, but the subtle voice that whispers, what if this goes wrong? Or what if you're not enough? It shows up right at the edge of your growth, right when you're about to do something that could actually change your life. And if you're not aware of it, you'll start making decisions based on comfort instead of possibility. Here's what you need to understand. Fear is not your enemy. It's a signal. It's a sign that you're stepping into something unfamiliar, something bigger than your current identity. The problem isn't fear itself. The problem is letting fear make your decisions for you. Because when fear is in control, you don't play to win, you play not to lose. And those are two completely different lives. Think about the opportunities you've held back from, the conversations you didn't have, the risks you didn't take, the dreams you put on hold. Not because you didn't want them, but because fear convinced you that staying where you are was safer than stepping into the unknown. But let me tell you something clearly. There is no safety in standing still. The cost of inaction is always greater than the risk of action. Fear will lie to you in very convincing ways. It will tell you that you need more time, more knowledge, more certainty. It will make you believe that you have to feel confident before you act. But confidence doesn't come first. Action comes first. Confidence is built by doing the very thing you're afraid of over and over again until what once felt impossible becomes familiar. You don't eliminate fear by waiting. You eliminate fear by moving through it. Every time you take action despite fear, you send a message to your brain, I'm in control. And every time you hesitate, you reinforce the idea that fear is stronger than you. So the question is not whether fear will show up, it will. The question is, who is going to lead you or your fear? Courage is not the absence of fear. Courage is the decision that something else is more important. Your growth, your future, your purpose, those things have to matter more than your temporary discomfort. Because fear thrives in hesitation. It grows when you overthink, when you delay, when you wait for the perfect moment. But the moment you act, even imperfectly, fear begins to lose its grip. And here's the shift that changes everything. Instead of asking, what if I fail? Start asking, what if I succeed? Start imagining the other side of that fear, the version of you who took the risk, who stepped up, who refused to stay small. That version of you is not a fantasy. It's a decision waiting to be made. You don't need to feel ready. You need to be willing to take the first step, willing to be uncomfortable, willing to face uncertainty and move anyway. Because on the other side of that fear is every opportunity you've been waiting for. So the next time fear shows up, and it will, don't try to silence it. Don't try to run from it. Recognize it for what it is, a doorway, and walk through it with action, not hesitation. Because the moment you stop letting fear dictate your decisions is the moment you start taking control of your destiny. Take a close look at your life right now and ask yourself a hard question. What kind of energies are you surrounded by every single day? Because whether you realize it or not, the people you spend time with, the conversations you entertain, the habits you tolerate, all of it is shaping who you are becoming. You don't rise above your environment, you absorb it. And if that environment is filled with doubt, negativity, and small thinking, it will slowly pull you down without you even noticing. Energy is contagious. You felt it. You walk into a room where people are complaining, blaming, making excuses, and within minutes, your mindset starts to shift. Your focus drops. Your belief weakens. On the other hand, when you're around people who are driven, focused, and committed to growth, something inside you wakes up. You start thinking bigger. You start expecting more from yourself. That's not an accident, that's influence. The problem is most people underestimate how much this matters. They think they can stay in the same environment, around the same limiting influences, and somehow create a different life. It doesn't work that way. If you want a different result, you need a different standard, and that includes the energy you allow into your life. This doesn't mean you need to cut everyone off or become isolated. It means you become intentional. You start paying attention to what lifts you and what drains you. You notice who challenges you to grow and who keeps you stuck in old patterns. And then you make decisions not based on comfort, not based on history, but based on where you're going. Because here's the truth. Not everyone is meant to go where you're going. Some people are committed to staying exactly where they are, and if you're not careful, they will pull you into that same space. Not because they're bad people, but because their standards are different. And if you keep aligning with those standards, your results will reflect them. You have to protect your mindset like it's your most valuable asset, because it is. What you feed your mind every day becomes your reality. The conversations you engage in, the content you consume, the voices you listen to, they all shape your beliefs. And your beliefs drive your actions. So if you're constantly surrounded by doubt, negativity, and limitation, you will start acting from that place, even if deep down you want more. Here's the shift. Start upgrading your environment on purpose. Seek out people who challenge you, who push you, who refuse to let you settle. Fill your space with conversations about growth, possibility, and action. Even if you don't have that physically around you yet, create it through what you read, what you listen to, what you watch. Build an environment that supports the person you're trying to become. And understand this, growth is uncomfortable, especially when it changes your relationships and your surroundings. There will be moments where you feel out of place, where you feel like you don't belong anymore. That's not a sign you're doing something wrong. That's a sign you're evolving. You're not here to stay the same. You're here to expand, to grow, to become more. And that requires you to step away from anything that consistently pulls you backwards. Not with anger, not with judgment, but with clarity and strength. Because at the end of the day, your life is a reflection of what you tolerate. And the moment you stop surrounding yourself with energy that drains you is the moment you create space for the energy that elevates you. Now let's confront one of the most dangerous habits that quietly steals your future: delay. Not because you don't care, not because you're lazy, but because you've convinced yourself there's always a better time to start. I'll do it tomorrow. I'll wait until things settle down. I just need a little more clarity. And before you realize it, days turn into weeks, weeks into months, and the life you keep talking about never actually begins. Here's the truth most people avoid. Delay is a decision. It may not feel like one, but every time you choose to wait instead of act, you are actively choosing to stay the same. You're reinforcing a version of yourself that hesitates, that overthinks, that avoids discomfort. And that pattern repeated enough times, becomes your identity. The mind is incredibly powerful, but it's also incredibly skilled at protecting you from discomfort. It will come up with logical, reasonable explanations for why now isn't the right time. It will tell you that you need more information, more preparation, more certainty. But what it's really doing is keeping you in a place that feels safe and familiar, even if that place is costing you your growth, because progress doesn't come from perfect timing. It comes from imperfect action. The people who move forward in life are not the ones who have everything figured out. They're the ones who are willing to start before they feel ready, to take a step without seeing the entire path, to move even when it's messy and uncertain. Think about this. Every time you delay something important, how does it make you feel? There's a weight that builds up, a quiet frustration, a sense that you're capable of more, but not living it. That feeling doesn't come from doing too much. It comes from doing too little of what truly matters. It's the gap between what you know you should be doing and what you're actually doing. And the longer that gap exists, the harder it becomes to close. Not because the task gets bigger, but because your belief in yourself gets smaller. You start questioning your discipline, your commitment, your ability to follow through. And that's the real cost of delay. It doesn't just steal time, it erodes confidence. So how do you break it? You stop waiting for the perfect moment and you create a decisive one. You interrupt the pattern right where it begins. The moment you catch yourself saying later, you replace it with now. Not in a reckless way, but in a deliberate, powerful way. You take one step, just one. Because action creates clarity, not the other way around. You don't need to finish everything today. You don't need to solve the entire problem. You just need to move, send the message, make the call, start the project. Take the first uncomfortable step that you've been avoiding. Because that single act does something powerful. It shifts your identity. It proves to you that you are someone who acts, not someone who waits. Momentum is everything. Once you start, it becomes easier to continue. But getting started, that's where most people lose. Not because they can't, but because they don't. And that's a choice you have the power to change right now. Understand this clearly. Your future is not built on intentions. It's built on actions. What you do consistently, especially when you don't feel like it, is what defines your results. And every moment you delay is a moment you can never get back.